Greetings. This is God's Beauty Official, and I welcome you to the Vintage Talk series. Now, it's been a very, 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 very long time I came on here on the Vintage Talk series. Okay, since April. Imagine April, May, June, July, like 3 months later. I'm sorry, y'all. I'll get used to the hang of things. I'll get used to the hang of it all, okay? And I hope you have an understanding. I hope you know? So here we are again, and yeah, let's just get into the message so that we don't take no time and we don't take no space. Okay, so yeah, let's get into it. So oftentimes we take this life for granted. We really take this life for granted so oftentimes, okay? I feel like it's because we feel like we have so much time, on our hands, that there's still tomorrow. But really, we're not even considering the fact that God's will is his will and his thoughts are not our thoughts. And we as people are orchestrated differently, meaning that my life is not yours, and we're different people living the same reality. Yeah, and we tend to take life for granted, thinking that the things we see now will forever be there, and the opportunities we get will forever be there, right? And we are not even aware that the reality of this world is far more different from what we feel like it is from the back of our heads. And that's one thing we need to consider and take into consideration continuously every day we get to live, to say that it is a privilege that we live this life. It is a privilege because the day before there's someone who thought they had a tomorrow, the tomorrow that you have, that they didn't have. And that's the reality of life. Where I'm getting at with this, through this quote that I was inspired to have typed out. And it says, every day that we get to live, we tend to look at today as one added day to our lives. But if we really look into the depth of reality, we also need to understand that it also means that it's one day taken away from our lives. Yeah, it hits. It hits. That every single day, as much as it is an opportunity to take on the world and to take on the day, it is one less day of your life. And we don't want to look at that reality. We want to look at the reality that there's still tomorrow. But sometimes we are not even aware that our tomorrow may not even be someone else's tomorrow. And our today was someone else's hope for tomorrow that they never got to at all. And yeah, we need to start to think this about life. And this all comes down to also understanding the types of lives we are living in order for us to not go around this world so vaguely and so purposelessly, but to understand who God is calling us to be and why we are here in the first place. Because one thing that makes us take life for granted is not understanding really who we are called on earth to be, or what God's vision of us being here is. And we think that our lives are meant to take 100 and something years for us to finish the ministry that God has called us here on earth to do, or the purpose and the impact that he's called us to do. But we are not even aware that even biblically it shows that everyone's life has a particular lifespan, has a particular start and finish, and that's their ministry in life, what they had to accomplish within that life space, like the lifespan. Look at, for example, Jesus. You think Jesus lived up until he had gray hair? No. He served his ministry for, I think it was 33 years, in his early 30s. That's when he departed. And this needs to be a wake-up call that not everybody in this world will live up until 100 and something years. And that's why we need to stay clear-minded. That's why we need to be real with ourselves sometimes and realize that if we don't wake up now, we don't want to wake up when it's too late. So imagine, like, Jesus' lifespan only took like 33, if I can say, years for him to finish his life purpose. And that's the purpose that God had over his life, to impact years and years and years after. So today, his legacy still stays. And it is a legacy that affected this time the whole entire human race, the whole entire world, even outside of the world on its own, even to eternity. It has been a legacy. It has had a drastic impact. And that is something that needs to make us realize that not everyone will live up to being really, really old in order to finish what God has called them to in this world. And how we understand the way how to maneuver around this world is to understand that a lot of these ideas that come to us, and that the whole entire world is revolved around, doesn't necessarily have to be a part of who we are. This is a call for us to understand who we are in aid of getting the further revelation of who God has called us in this world to be. And that's a question a lot of people may stagger around, trying to understand, trying to figure out. But what if I tell you that you don't have to figure out who you are as a whole entirety before you realize that you can walk in your calling, just about that, according to the will of God? And that's where we also need to get that we shouldn't wait for the time that we understand why God has put us here on earth to be impactful, to be of substance, to be of change. So in this world, we have different types of people. And I'll divide them according to these few categories. And I bet there's more, but then I just want to focus on these few categories. There are people that have a really long lifespan. Okay, a really long lifespan, meaning that there's a lot of things that God wants to do within their lives up until that age. It's people with a very, very long lifespan. And this is what you get with these types of people, right? Is that they have a lot that God wants to do within their lives from up until that old age. And sometimes it's more like you get in the Bible, like Adam had to live a very long life to see the generations to come and to see God's promise being fulfilled at an older age. And sometimes the people that have a very long lifespan, sometimes it takes when a person reaches the peak of their life, sometimes it's because the peak of their life is at their old age. Why? Because that's God's way of showing that anything is possible if you believe in God. At any age you can accomplish anything. I remember Coco Chanel, because I love fashion. So I remember Coco Chanel. That was her peak. Her peak was at the later ages of her life. And I also remember Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was effective at a young age. However, he got to live the fruits of what he was building, suffering for at a very later stage in life, when he had the gray hair, and that's the same even with even in the Bible. When you look at Abraham's story and Sarah's story, they had Isaac, their first child, at a very, very old age, past the age that in this world is normally an age where you can't bear children, but they had a child at that age. And that's what God is trying to do. There are people whose lives are like that. Okay, that's the way God uses them, and that's the way God moves about their lives. The series of their lives is what God is trying to use to show people his greatness and his goodness, right? And then there are those that now have not so much of a longer lifespan, but have a very short lifespan compared to the type of lifespan that we think is everyone's God-ordained will. The people now with a much more shorter lifespan, the lifespan of which we would say they lived for such a short period of time before they departed. They never had to get the gray hair or get the golden age hair before they departed. And this is like now God willingly, because there are people who die before their time, and then there are those that die God willingly, meaning that it was about time for them to depart from the earth to be with him. even in the short time span, meaning that God did orchestrate their life to be that short. And this is why, and I know sometimes it's like, well, why would God make a person live for such a short amount of time if there's many things to look out for even at an older age, and especially when the time span is super, super short. And I mean, like, before they even reach their 20s or before they even reach their 30s or anything like that. Why do they naturally, and I'm not saying because the enemy had a way in or anything like that, but naturally that's their ministry in life. That's what they were here to do, to just share those years with the whole world before God takes them back. And this is why these types of people served their life purpose all throughout without anyone really realizing that they have served their life purpose. And most of the times, the ones that have a short amount of lifespan are normally people who God wants to put in this world to remind us of the reality that tomorrow is not guaranteed. To remind us constantly that we ought to not take life for granted. We ought to not take life for granted. And this is biblical, Jesus himself served his life and everlasting, outside of this world ministry in just 33 approximately. I'll just say 33, you understand, right? 33 years, in just 33 years, he changed the whole entire world and the whole entire universe and the whole entire eternity within 33 years. God can do the same with someone else's life, but just because we don't see it the way God does, it doesn't take away the fact that they really did have such a huge impact. And sometimes it's to bless us with the presence that we learn so much not to take for granted later on in life, to say that there are these types of people that you'll never get. And to also remind us to utilize the fact that time is precious, especially when it comes to time spent with people around us, to be careful how we treat the people around us. I know it's very hard sometimes because we are all wired up in our own minds, we're all wired up in our own emotions, but sometimes when we communicate out there, we need to take mind that tomorrow is not promised to anyone, and someone you may have spoken to yesterday may not even be around today too. You never want to be that person where the last communication with someone who departed is a negative one, is the one that makes you resent yourself all the more because you were not someone who showed that they really did matter. And that's why we also need to be very mindful of how we project ourselves, how people perceive us, because you are a living ministry. You are a living ministry. The more you take time to realize and wake up and start to take life as a gift, is the more you're taking away from yourself. And yes, there are a lot of people that God uses in this prospect where they wasted all their life, all the more to live the life that they had to live from a young age, to teach. And you never want to be that person, okay? You want to utilize the time that you have now. That's why it's very important to move according to the way God wants you to move. And this is what also makes me understand why obedience is important, because sometimes we think we have this whole entire time. We think we have this whole entire day, but we're not realizing that the more we delay is the more we delay the fact that a lot of things need to be pushed up until the time that we finish our ministry in this world. You get, a lot of things need to happen in this order. Oh, Jesus. This is a touching subject. It's a yeah, wow. It's a touching one. So that's why it's important to also be obedient, because we don't have the whole time. We don't have this whole entire, we don't have much time, to yeah, yeah. We don't want to delay how God wants our lives to go according to his will, because everyone is in their own lane. Okay. And as much as we are in our own lanes, our life is intertwined with a lot of lives. So yeah, we need to be mindful of all these things. And it's a reality check, really. It's a reality check that we really need now and again, now and again. And I know sometimes it could be frustrating for certain people not to understand really who or what's going on in their lives and who they are, who they are, probably at an age that they want to know, they want to, and that is why God is there. That is why God is there. That is why God needs to be, this needs to be a humbling thing, something that humbles us to say that we need to start thinking about how we are to this world. We need to start thinking that if we gathered everyone that we have encountered in this world to write about us, especially of recent, because we evolve as people, and what matters more is who you are today, right? And what matters more is who you are today. So looking at the people around and looking at the people that you've impacted by far, what do you think they would take from your life? What person have you been to them all? How would you see yourself from their point of view? And if it's not something that you're proud of, how are you willing to change that? How do you want people to see you? And how can you utilize the time that you have today in order to change the narrative, if maybe it's not something you are proud of, or maybe you want to improve? So yeah, that's just a little bit that I wanted to share.